はじめまして、私の名前はハーウェル・ジョナサンと申します。今はカリフォルニア州のロサンゼルス市に住んでいます。仕事は日本の新聞会社で研究をしています。日本語は高校1年生から勉強し始めました。それは16歳ぐらいからですね。今私は30歳なので、もうほとんど14年、もう10年以上、日本語を勉強しました。日本語の学び方っていうなら、まずは学校で学んだんですけど、日本にも実際4年間暮らした経験もあるので、そこでは私は自分で一人で学び、続けたんですね。I decided to learn Japanese because I was actually raised in Hawaii, and in Hawaii there's a very heavy Japanese population, as well as influence from Japan. And growing up, a lot of my community members were of Japanese descent, and I would be invited to eat at Japanese restaurants or participate in local Bon Odori festivals, and I always thought that it was so fun and so interesting, and I was always curious to learn more about Japan, and I thought the best way to learn about a country is through speaking its language. So when I entered high school, my high school fortunately offered Japanese, and I thought, wow, this is great. I can finally learn. So yeah, that's when I decided to choose Japanese as my foreign language. And yeah, it all kind of started from there. Personally, I've grown so much as an individual, in that it has challenged me to step out of my comfort zone in so many ways, and it has also expanded my networking possibilities. I would maybe not networking, I wouldn't say that's the right word, but it's more just it has offered me a chance to build connections and understand communities outside of just my immediate bubble, right? So I, was fortunate to live in Japan. And so living in Japan and using Japanese, using that Japanese language in Japan has offered me so many unique experiences and chances to build relationships that I never would have been able to do if I didn't study the language. So yeah, I think that learning Japanese as a foreign language and really sticking through with it, not just my 4 years in high school, but even continuing it out through my college education and then actually moving to the country, just being very consistent with the language learning has been a big challenge, but also it has offered me so many wonderful and exciting opportunities. So yeah. The reason why I studied Japanese, despite, I mentioned, I wanted to understand this culture, and it has a tie to Hawaii, but another reason why I really wanted to study it is so that I can meet people, because I'm a type of person who is always fascinated by different types of people, and I love forming relationships, and I guess growing up in Hawaii, I would see Japanese tourists come in and out of the city. I was raised in Honolulu, and sometimes I would see lost tourists from Japan, and I always kind of thought, I really wish I could help these tourists. And one of our It's funny, in our Japanese class, one of our assignments was we had a field trip to Waikiki, which is like a very tourist heavy area part of Honolulu. And there we had a chance to like interview tourists, like Japanese tourists, about like their traveling and stuff. And I remember thinking, wow, like I've learned so much Japanese in my 4 years of high school that like I'm kind of able to have a very simple, conversation with them. And I thought in that moment, wow, like I would love to be better, and I would love to help people ideally one day with that. So I haven't fulfilled that dream necessarily. I'm not living in Hawaii, and I'm not, working in tourism or anything, but when I've learning Japanese and connecting to communities, like whether that be the tourists that come into Hawaii, whether that be the communities that like I have met while living in Japan, like whether that be the Los Angeles, Japanese community, it's all viable because I like the connections that I can make are all viable because I'm able to speak the language, because it carries that ability carries across so many different communities and environments. So yeah, I'm pretty thankful that I've had the opportunities to learn the language, and upkeeping and maintaining the language is a whole nother game, which I actively work on by choice. And yeah, it's pretty awesome all in all that I'm able to connect to all these different groups. Try to use it as much as you can, and that no application is small. Like any chance that you have to use what you have stored in your brain, like the hours that you've spent learning how to write these characters and reading and writing, Japanese is a very difficult language, and sometimes I feel like the payoff can be very minimal. Yeah, it's very difficult to learn as a second language, and if you feel like you're not using it, or if you're not, if you're not getting something out of all this information that you've learned, it can feel kind of defeating. And so I would encourage, students of Japanese to try to, figure out little micro moments here and there to apply the language. And that, of course, is challenging too. It's not like, I'm not saying like, oh, you have to just go out and meet people and like start using the language. I'm not saying like that is one avenue, but I would say like, maybe try to like listen to some news, or like try to watch some content like Japanese shows, and like try to like connect like what you've learned with that show, instead of just like merely passively consuming. Maybe you can like pause every few seconds and like try to like repeat what they say, or like read like the little signs that you can see like from the shows or something, and like be like, oh, like I learned that, like I can do that. Like you have to like constantly be giving yourself like, I don't know, like affirmations of sorts to that what you're doing is leading to something. And I think that's really like the challenge of language learning, is that there is never, like you said, Lena, there's like, it's a lifelong journey. You're always going to be learning something. Like there is no fluent, people always ask me, John, are you fluent in Japanese? And I can never be like, yes, I am I am Japanese master. Like I know everything. That is absolutely a lie. will never say that. I can never admit that I'm fluent. I can only say that, I'm learning and I'm still learning. I'm still growing. There are thousands of characters in the language, and I don't know if I'll ever learn all of them in my lifetime, but I'm still trying. So yeah, I would say, keep trying to try your best to find micro applications of the language, so that you can feel the fruits of your labor in small ways.